back in session. Party of the council are present, all members of our jury are present, and cross-examination as to Sergeant Smith.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant Smith, you testified about the exhibits and one of the exhibit numbers. Exhibits 888, 889, and 890. I guess we would call those the summary charts of the tower hits you found in different casinos.
Yes, sir.
And you compiled these lists?
Yes, I did.
And when did you do that?
This week.
This week as in Monday, or this week as in last night?
No, I started Monday and finished yesterday evening.
And you went through, you searched by, strike that. You said you kind of did a search for the coordinates, correct?
Correct. I located the tower closest to the casinos, and then I found those GPS coordinates, and I searched those coordinates within the PDF document.
And when you did that search, you just, whatever highlighted, you said, okay, there we go, that's the tower, or that's the tower, what call was that kind of thing, and so you start writing it all down?
Well, yes, if it hit on the exact numbers, I verified that it was the same tower. Then I looked at the call time, I documented the call time, I documented how many times the phone contacted that tower, and the time range during that day.
Did you note if this was the beginning tower or end tower?
No.
Were some of them from the beginning tower and some of the contacts from the end tower?
Yeah, on several contacts there were 2 towers. That's on one of the exhibits. You'll see both the towers on there for the Lilies and Commerce Casino.
And that was it, exhibit 890. But on exhibit 888 and 889, I didn't see that both towers were listed.
You're talking about San Manuel and Changa?
Correct.
Correct.
And did you do that purposely to not list the other tower?
Actually, I did that to give the defendant the benefit of the doubt, because the towers I chose and I selected were the closest towers that I could find searching the records to the casino. So if there were other towers that were further away, I didn't feel comfortable saying, well, that's at the casino. I picked ones that were within a mile radius.
So if you picked a tower or a call that had a beginning cell tower, but that was not adjacent to the casino, you just listed that, well, the end tower was the one next to the casino, so I'm going to list the call.
That's not entirely correct.
Did some of these towers, calls that you listed, just have the end tower being near the casino?
Yes.
And you thought the end tower was reliable to show it's near the casino?
When I documented one that just had an end tower, that's why you see in parentheses the time gap, which I thought was relevant. So yes, you'll see on some of them there's only one tower hit. But afterwards there's 4-hour, 5-hour, 6-hour, 12-hour time gaps, which could suggest he was by the casino.
And you removed the azimuth from the coordinates, correct?
I have no experience in documenting the azimuth, so that's not something I mess with.
Did you remove the azimuth from the coordinates?
I didn't remove anything. I searched the latitude and longitude, so...
When you listed the tower, did you remove the azimuth reading for that tower phone call?
I only documented the latitude and longitude, so if there's an azimuth formula, I don't know how to use that. I did not document that. On the exhibits and within the phone records, I only pulled out the latitude and longitude.
Did you make the decision to remove the azimuth from the coordinates or were you told to do it?
Objection asked and answered.
The objection sustained is assuming facts not in evidence that he removed anything as opposed to didn't consider it.
True. Did you remove the azimuth location from the coordinates? That's listed right next to it.
Objection asked and answered.
You haven't answered.
On what records are you referring to?
The chart he made, the exhibits 888, 889, and 890.
Okay.
You listed the tower without the azimuth, correct?
So I didn't remove anything, I just only posted the latitude and longitude.
You did not post the azimuth.
Correct, I don't know how to mess with the azimuth.
Did you make the decision to not put the azimuth on the exhibit?
No,
Did someone suggest you remove it?
no.
Did you consult with anyone from the district attorney's office about these exhibits before they were finalized?
I presented it to them like I present every police report to them.
So yes.
It wasn't a collaboration or anything, but yes, this is what I did.
Okay. So you made up something, you said, this is what I'm thinking of present.
I didn't make up anything.
Well, create. Sorry. I created this item. This is what I have.
I pulled the latitude and longitude from the cell phone records and I placed them into a table to show where the latitude and longitude was hitting in relation to the casinos.
Was anything added or removed after you discussed that with someone from the district attorney's office?
Yes, Mr. Rhymes suggested we total the number of tower hits.
Anything else?
Yep.
Now, Mr. Weissman testified about the bank records received for his analysis. Remember that testimony?
I do.
Objection beyond the scope of relevance.
It goes to,
Foundational overruled.
and some of the records he received, you wrote subpoenas, correct?
Objection relevance beyond the scope.
Sustained.
It goes to impeachment, Your Honor, of a government witness.
Objection sustained on relevance.
Can I be heard, Your Honor?
No.
You actually received the checks for Mr. Merritt's Union Bank account.
Objection.
Your warrant, correct?
Relevance beyond the scope.
Overruled.
So with the search warrant, yes, we received partial records and they sent other records after the fact.
And do you remember the dates of when the initial packet was sent and the secondary packet was sent?
No.
Would reviewing a couple documents maybe help refresh your memory?
They have the dates on them.
Proof them.
Your Honor, I'm going to pose an objection that requires a cite while he's reviewing the documents.
Overruled.
Does reviewing those documents help refresh your memory on the dates you received the information?
It shows me the dates that those letters were written and sent, but I couldn't tell you when I received it.
And the dates of when the information was sent were 13 days apart?
One is dated November 7th, and I believe the other is dated the 20th, yes.
Of 2014.
Correct.
And within the second one would have been all the canceled checks for Mr. Merritt's account that could have been reviewed.
Objection, lacks foundation, relevance, and beyond the
Overruled,
scope.
he can answer if he knows.
I wasn't able to review the second disc or what was sent out. I never saw that disc.
Therefore, object, lacks foundation, move to strike.
Well, there wasn't any answer, but now the objection is the lack of foundation sustained.
So you're telling us you did not review information that was sent in response to a search warrant you offered?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Did you follow up, or is it your general practice to see if all the information you request in the search warrant is received?
Yes.
And if it's not received, what do you do?
I guess it depends on the response. Why is it not received? I don't understand the question. I mean,
Like if it's not received, you follow up and say, why am I not getting it?
well, in this case, I did get something initially, the initial records and statements which we reviewed. The follow-up disc that you're referring to with all the bank records, that came sometime afterwards, and I never saw that.
And the first letter says, additional records will be furnished.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
I believe it refers to checking the archives, and if they can find some, it'll be furnished, but
Within 2 weeks, another letter was generated in response to your warrant.
per the dates on the letter, yes.
And you didn't look.
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained is argumentative and cumulative.
Are you the investigating officer, the lead detective for this case currently?
Currently, yes.
Did you determine as the lead detective if anybody reviewed any of the records? Well, right there. Did you, as the lead attorney, see if any other records were received due to a subpoena issued by your department?
Objection, relevance, and vague. And he's not an attorney also.
I assume you meant lead detective.
That's what I meant, yes.
Yeah. Other than that, the objection is overruled.
Okay, can you tell me again?
I'll try it better, right term. You as the lead detective, did you review or have somebody review all responses to subpoenas at this response?
Objection, he misstates his testimony as to his legal authority to issue subpoenas.
Overruled.
We tried to, yes, we review everything to make sure it's all complete. We don't want to send over items that are incomplete. Unfortunately, though, in a case as large as this, that disc was overlooked. I did not realize it was there.
Have you since, before,
Yeah, we found it this morning.
does your records show if anybody reviewed or noted or recorded those records coming in?
I don't understand, like signing a certified letter or something like that?
Or property log or evidence sheet or anything where it's tracked?
I don't believe so.
Do you know if these were reviewed by anybody at the sheriff's department?
I don't believe so.
You don't see any record of that?
No, I can't see any reports of those checks reviewed. The bank account was reviewed, not the subsequent checks that were sent to us.
But you can confirm they were received?
Yes, sir.
And your verification of them being received, how did you determine that?
We found
Vague and no relevance.
Overruled, Jansen.
we found them in the Blu-ray discs that were sent over to the district attorney's office.
The Blu-ray disc sent from district attorney's office from the sheriff's department?
Correct, when we filed the case.
So somebody in the sheriff's department, all the exhibits and information and reports and everything were placed on the disc and transported over to the district attorney's office, correct?
Correct, and it's a misstatement to say when we filed the case because Mr. Merritt was arrested in November of 2014, and there's been constant communication and liaisoning with the DA's office, so I can't actually tell you when they received that DVD.
It's safe to say it was before trial started.
Objection, relevance.
Overruled, Jansen.
Yes, I believe so.
I'll try and cover some things that I can on these reports that I saw. I'll go to exhibit 890. This is the Commerce Casino tower hits. Show that before you. Some of the tower hits involve right around New Year's. Can you see those dates?
Not on this record.
Not on that page. Wait. Oh, I'm sorry.
Try Pachanga.
You are correct. My notes are a little off. That's 888. Go in so I can actually read the screen. This is again exhibit 888. There are a number of tower hits between December 31st, 2009 and January 2nd, 2010.
Yes, sir.
And the ones on the 39th, first one starts...
31st?
31st, thank you. 31st starts just before midnight.
Yes, sir.
And then the ones on the first go from the morning, or late morning, early afternoon, into the evening.
Correct.
And then the second is at around noon.
No. That's 12 in the morning.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. So that, later on that evening.
Early morning.
And
12:05 a.m. is...
5 minutes after midnight.
Yes, sir.
so Pachanga is a casino and a resort, correct?
Yes?
Would this be consistent with somebody maybe being an overnight guest?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
And I'm going to go to 889. I believe that's the Salmon Well. On page 1, there's the dates of March 25th and March 26th. Those days are obviously adjacent, correct?
Yes, sir.
And on the 25th, it starts at 6:28 p.m.
That's correct.
And it goes to just before midnight.
Yes, sir.
And then it continues the next morning at 2:30 a.m. and goes until 10 a.m. That morning on the 26th.
Correct.
Would that be consistent with an overnight guest?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Let me ask you this. You're familiar with San Manuel, correct?
I've never actually been to the inside the casino, but I know where it is.
As a hotel?
I don't know. I'm familiar with the casino. I don't know if it has a hotel, honestly.
Is there anything that you can arrest somebody for going to a casino?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
Is it illegal to gamble in a casino at any of those three locations?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained.
So you finished all these exhibits, 889, 888, 890 last night, correct?
No.
You finished them yesterday?
Yeah, they were done yesterday, correct.
And then they were provided to defense today.
Objection, relevance.
Overruled, you can answer if he knows.
I believe he gave them to you today.
Then just go with the is it this time, Your Honor, until we have a time to fully review the report, we're asking to suspend our cross-examination as discussed with the court.
Sure,
We can
that's
pick up
fine.
with Mr. Smith, or Sergeant Smith, at the appropriate time.
That's fine. So you can step down for now. I'm still subject to my recall. And then we're gonna basically interrupt the cross-examination to take an additional witness at this time.
Yes.
You call your next witness.
Kevin Boles, please.
State your full name, spell it for the record.
Kevin Boles, Kevinboles.
Okay, proceed.
What is your occupation, sir?
I'm a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation
How long have you been employed as a federal agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
since November 2005.
You know lawyers aren't good at math. It's what, about 9 years?
It's a little over 13 years.
See? Lawyers aren't good at math, right? What is your current assignment?
My current assignment is the investigation of public corruption, which is essentially public officials that are doing things they shouldn't be doing.
Not judges, right?
Can I not comment on that?
Only federal judges, right?
Yes, sir.
Back in 2014, what was your assignment?
In 2014, I was the coordinator for a fugitive task force in the Inland Empire known as the Inland Regional Apprehension Team.
And what is the nature of that assignment to that unit?
It was a violent crime task force. We were charged with apprehending fugitives. Most of them wanted for homicides, attempt murder, and rape, and cases such as those. And as the coordinator for that task force, I oversaw some local detectives that were on the team, as well as conducted some of the cell phone exploitation that we used to apprehend those individuals.
And as part of that assignment, what kind of training and experience do you have that would assist you in the apprehension of fugitives?
Are you referring to the training as regard to cell phone exploitation?
Well, we can start there. Why don't you
Okay.
tell us about that?
Well, FBI agents do get some standard cell phone training at the academy. It's not much. I went ahead and got a few extra weeks of training when I first started working fugitives to understand the records, what the phone companies could provide to us as far as information, and then how to exploit that information in such a way as to locate individuals. Throughout my tenure there, in about 2015 and 16, I did obtain several more weeks of training to then become a certified member of the FBI Cellular Analysis Survey Team.
What is a cellular analysis survey team?
So the Cellular Analysis Survey Team, which is known as CAST, it's a team of agents around the country. Forgive me, I don't know the exact number. We used to be about 63, but I believe we are somewhere around 80 agents now around the country. And we have the extra training than the average agent to understand cell phones, the historical call detail records, and understanding what they mean and how we can use those to locate missing kids, fugitives, sometimes to help even identify subjects and eliminate subjects in investigations.
And what is the extent of the extra training that you had to go through to be a member of that team?
It was approximately 9 weeks of training spread all over the country. Some of the training was done by engineers employed by the FBI and other agents that are formerly engineers. Some of the training is done by some private companies, and then some of the training is provided to us by the 5 major cellular providers out there, which are AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, US Cellular, and Verizon.
And what kind of training would you receive from specifically those industry experts regarding cell phones that was applicable to your task as part of a CAST member?
Most of the training was, a good part of it was not only understanding how to read their records. Every company stores their records differently. But we also learned a good understanding of what happens when a cell phone is used as far as how it communicates with that tower and how that actually translates onto the records that we're looking at on the piece of paper.
And how is that training helpful in either apprehending fugitives or other types of investigations you would participate in?
The cell phone can give you, from a historical perspective, it can give you a general location of where somebody has been. And a lot of times the analysis of somebody's patterns in the past can help identify where they may be currently, and that can be used in a fugitive type case. There are other types of more real-time things that cell phone companies can provide and equipment we can use to more closely pinpoint where somebody is. But that is only used in a real-time setting where we're actively looking for a phone that's turned on right now, so to speak.
You're not a RF engineer, are you?
No, sir.
Okay. Were you taught by RF engineers?
Some of the folks from the cell phone companies were RF engineers and network engineers.
Is there a difference between an RF engineer and a network engineer?
Yeah, I believe the RF engineers were responsible for building the infrastructure for how the phone communicates with the cell tower through the air. And then the network engineers were responsible for the design of the network from the cell tower through what they call a backhaul, which is all the infrastructure from once that phone call hits the tower and then goes into sort of the phone grid, so to speak.
And this training you received from those industry experts as well as other private and law enforcement experts, were you able to put that to work as a member of the CAST team or as an agent in general?
Yes, sir.
So this was a practical application of what you were taught by other experts?
Yes, sir.
And I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to pinpoint a little bit more directly. How, as a member of the CAST team or as an agent in general, would you use this training and this access to technology in your investigations?
Well, in a standard investigation, Either you're presented with a cell phone that's of interest to a case, or maybe belongs to a fugitive or something of that nature. And by looking at some of these past patterns, looking at where they've been, you can develop an idea of where they may have been and where they may be now, based on their pattern of life.
You used the term earlier in answer to an active investigation, I believe, if I'm not misquoting you. Is that different than looking at the history of activity to show some predictors? Is there a difference?
Yes, sir.
How is
Yeah.
that?
So in an active investigation, there's additional tools and resources that can be used to actively pinpoint where an individual is when their phone is powered on and in use. From a historical perspective, we don't always have that luxury. A lot of times we only have the phone records and the cell towers that were used by that cell phone for a particular period of time. It's much less accurate as far as the precision of where that phone was. You can determine a general location of where that phone was at a given time when it was used.
What types of investigations have you engaged in that with this type of cell phone expertise was helpful?
Well, many cases, mostly fugitive cases, but we've found missing children, missing persons, and we've recovered evidence in a few cases where this type of analysis was used, and bodies were found from homicide cases.
Approximately how many times in your career handling this type of evidence and using this type of technology have you used it to find, or in cases such as those?
Well, I would say dozens. I mean, we caught hundreds of fugitives, but we didn't use cell phone evidence in every single one of those cases. So to be conservative, I would say dozens.
So, from your perspective as an investigator using this technology, can you give us an insight into the mechanics of cell phones and their relationship to cell towers?
Yeah, certainly. So when a cell phone is powered on and it's in service, it's constantly scanning its environment. It's looking for the cleanest and the best signal for that phone. And when the phone is powered on, it may be able to read 4 or 5 towers in its area, and it will sort of stack those in a ranking from most attractive down to least attractive. When that individual goes to use that phone to either send a phone call or to receive a phone call, the phone is going to that initial sort of push of the button is going to request resources from the cell phone company. And when that occurs, it creates the call detail record, and that's when that first cell tower connection is initiated, and that's what's logged when the resources are requested. Then the phone goes through a process. It happens very, very quickly, but the phone company verifies that you paid your bill, that you should have service, and when the other person answers the phone, and then the call goes into what you would call a traffic mode, where they're actually speaking on the phone. And then when the phone call is terminated, a terminating cell tower is logged by the cell phone company. In some cases, it's the same tower. In some cases, it's not. Sometimes it's because the person had traveled, and sometimes it just may be that in the middle of the call, the network decided that it was of better use to put the call onto a neighboring cell tower. That only works if that neighboring cell tower happens to have coverage of the location where you're at.
Does the user of the cell phone have any control over which tower it initially connects to?
No.
Does the user of the cell phone have any control over whether a subsequent tower is utilized by the network during a call?
No.
Who controls those things?
For the initiating tower, is the cell phone itself chooses that. Once you're in the call, the network can control it, and the terminating tower, or whatever towers are used throughout that call, are controlled by the network.
is the use of, or the initial connection to a tower affected by something called clutter? And you may need to define the term clutter for us.
Yes, I've heard this before where if a cell phone tower is overloaded, which for example may be, it does happen outside of baseball fields at the end of a game when there's 65,000 people trying to leave at the same time and they're calling their loved ones and whatnot. However, based on what the engineers have told us during our training, in those situations when that person hits send on a phone call, it's requesting resources from that tower that the phone chooses. That's what's logged in the call detail records. If the network decides that tower is too busy and it can bounce...
I would object because this is hearsay. He's just saying what somebody else told him.
Overrule. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So once somebody hits send, the tower that phone is requesting resources from is what is logged in the call detail record for the initiating tower. If that tower happens to be overloaded and the network can move it to a neighboring tower, it will do that, but it will not be reflected as the initiating tower. The initiating tower is going to be the one the phone chose. In that case, maybe it's a short call, and the terminating tower may be that neighboring tower.
Could you define what you mean by the network?
Yes, so that's in this case it would be, so AT&T Wireless. They have a switch that controls many of their cell towers in a particular area, and that switch is monitoring which towers are busy and which towers not. So that phone chooses the tower initially, but once you're kind of locked into their network, they can kind of steer that call where they need to make sure that there's balance inside their network.
Is that network operated by computers and their internal algorithms, or is there actually a person sitting there flipping switches?
I don't work for the phone company, so I don't want to answer that question because I don't know the ins and outs and how it works.
Okay.
I imagine it's a computer though.
Okay. How does terrain potentially affect your use of that technology in your investigations?
Objectives foundation.
Overrule.
So terrain can play a role in various things. It can create what's called a shadowing effect, much like if someone shined a flashlight across this room, certain tables and chairs would create a shadow. And it can do the same thing. It can block the signal from transmitting through a hillside or through a mountain, or sometimes even through a building. It can also create an elevation for a cell tower, which would create better line of sight for the area below, much like placing somebody on the stage during a concert. They put performers up high so people can see them in the back row. So it can play a role either way by either creating better line of sight, but it can also create, it can be an obstruction as well for the cell signals.
Are you familiar with the term handoff?
Yes, sir.
And what does that term mean?
A handoff is generally when somebody's on a call and they're traveling down the highway. There's overlap between each of the cell towers, and that's while you're on the call, your phone continues that process of scanning its environment. And as soon as it starts to see that the signal from your current connection is getting weaker, and it starts to see a more attractive cell tower, that call will hand off from one tower to another throughout the call until it's terminated. That process is done usually without the user knowing it, because you don't drop the call. When you drop a call, that usually means that there was not a good handoff from one tower to another.
A fumble?
Sure, we can use that.
Okay. Have you heard of do you know the phrase forced redirect or a directed retry?
Yes, sir.
And what is that term? How do you understand that term?
It's similar to the issue with clutter, where the phone call, it originates on a tower and then it's forced to another cell tower nearby for one reason or another.
And that is something done by the network?
Yes.
not the phone.
Correct.
The phone would still connect to that initial tower,
Yes, same situation as described when we were describing clutter.
and then the network would force a redirect to a different tower for whatever reason.
Yes, as long as there's sufficient coverage from that tower that it's being directed to.
The owner of Objectives Foundation, he already stated he doesn't know how the network works.
Overruled.
Now, you've mentioned a couple times the call detail record. Please tell us what those are.
So the call detail record is, it's a list of the activity and the interactions between a cell phone and the network or the cell phone company. So during a criminal investigation, pursuant to some court order or search warrant, the phone companies will provide this to law enforcement, and it essentially provides the date and time of the interaction, what it was, if it was a voice call or text, in some cases data. It'll tell you the parties involved in the call. Sometimes it'll provide the identifying equipment, which is like a serial number for the cell phone. It'll also provide the cell tower that was used with the network. Every call that's made or received, that shows up in a long list of activity, and that's called the call detail record.
Just as an exemplar, I'm going to put up here 439C that we've seen a couple of times already. And before I zoom in on a particular area, do you see what's being projected?
Yes, sir.
Is that a call detail record?
Yes, sir.
Because AT&T decided to write really, really small, we will use the zoom function here. And I'm going to move us up to the top right of the document.
Can I interrupt you for a minute? Can council approach for a moment? Don't leave the recorder. A little bit early. Mr. Moline is needed in another courtroom, and that judge says he doesn't want to wait for him. So I'm going to be nice and accommodate the other judge. So we'll take our afternoon recess, this time 15 minutes. Keep in mind the admonitions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case, and we'll see everyone back in about 15 minutes.